Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares, and we are delighted that you're in class with us today. We broadcast 2 hours Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Central Time through 11 a.m. Central Time, from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. If you would like to call us, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. If you'd like to listen 24/7 to this broadcast in an endless loop that is refreshed every day, except for the weekends, 605-562-4080, or 605-477-3249. 605-477-3249. I'm delighted to be broadcasting with Guineith Isaacs. She's live in Australia with us today. Good morning, Guineith. Guineith, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. Thanks for being with us today. I know you're staying up late. You're on the other side of the world, and I really appreciate that. You know, Guineith, we were talking last week about the dental records and how dentists are forwarding our dental information onto the government databases so they can have more information about us. And it looks like there's just no end to what they are storing and tracking and want to have about us. And of course, royalty is extremely interested in genetics as well. So they're probably using this information for multiple purposes. One, to find us should we try to hide from them. Two, to see how well their evil plans are working to kill us off and cause diseases, and see how diseases are being spread and so forth. Do you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that. And coincidentally, while I was waiting to go on air to keep myself awake, I was actually watching Bruce Almighty again. And you know, the DNA database is also mentioned in there. I think I mentioned last week about, you know, how the dental records were mentioned in that particular movie. Well, I just watched it again, and the DNA records were also identified, and that came out, I read an article about it a number of years ago about how they were actually taking everybody's DNA at birth. You know, and that was the real reason why they want the little blood sample from your baby at birth when you're in the hospital. And probably they take the mother's blood records at the same time. So, and it's like, and it actually did come out. I wish I could remember where that magazine article was, but it is actually kept on a database. So if they find any of your DNA anywhere near a crime scene, then you could be implicated in that crime scene, whether you actually did it or not. Mm-hmm. Just for the fact
I was thinking
the DNA was there.
I was thinking about that. You know, a lot of us have trash service of one kind or another. If we have a job, we have a little waste paper basket near our little workstation, and we might blow our nose, or we might remove lipstick, you know, whatever. if we cut ourselves and we have a Band-Aid on that cut and we just take that Band-Aid off, replace it, and put it in the trash, put another Band-Aid on, all of these samples can be used as DNA. Yeah. And we're not thinking about it. And if we use a paper cup, if we go to a restaurant and we just throw out the cup, or if we use a paper cup at home and we throw it in the trash, and then we take the trash out on Fridays or Mondays or whenever the trash pickup day is, there it goes. And so we are all doing this. As a matter of fact, Guineith, let me share something with you. One of the things that I decided to do, I'd been fed up with the public school system in our neck of the woods, and I thought it was substandard by a long, long margin. And our son decided that after being homeschooled all of his life, he wanted to try the public training camp. He wanted to be a freshman in the public training camp. So Mrs. Finelli and I said, sure. So we interviewed the principal, and we interviewed the teachers, and we interviewed the superintendent, and we decided, we'll try it, see how it goes. And then I was invited, and Mrs. Finelli was, we were both invited to be part of a drug testing committee. There's something new.
Right, yeah.
And I was resistant to this drug testing thing. And they said, well, drugs are running rampant. And I said, okay, so do we have a problem with drugs in the school? And they wouldn't answer me. But they were insistent. The superintendent and the principal were insistent upon having this drug testing program implemented.
Funding.
That's right.
There's funding attached to it. Yeah.
That was my belief. And I mentioned that, we hardly have enough money to have books in the classroom. As a matter of fact, they only had 6 books in one of the agriculture classes, and they didn't have enough books for the students, so they didn't even assign homework because they thought it would be unfair. Yes, they only had 6 books. And so instead of
this is in a rural district, right?
Yes, yeah, extremely.
Agriculture lessons are kind of important.
Absolutely. So the whole school had the whole high school had less than 200 students. The whole high school, not the class, not the graduating class, the whole school. So this drug testing thing was being pushed on the committee, like we need to have it. And I'd ask questions like, so what actually is the problem? Is there a problem? And they could never answer that question. So I started asking questions like, all right, so what about, how does this work? Well, the numbers, the students are identified by numbers. Each student has a number. We pick the numbers at random, and then we call students into the front office, and we have them urinate in a cup. We pee in a cup, and we test right then and there while the student's waiting. And I said, okay, so what do you do? What do you do when it tests positive? Oh, we send it off. Where? Well, we don't know. So you're going to send off a DNA sample someplace where you don't even know where it's going, and you're going to do that. Well, they couldn't answer that. And I said, well, I want to know where. And then I want to know what happens to that DNA sample, and where does it live, and how long does it live there, and who are these people, and how much does it cost to do that?
That occurred to me just then. Have these people heard of chains of evidence and habeas corpus?
Well, interesting you say that. So I said, well, I'd like more information. And the next thing I know, they were sending out these invitations to the meetings, for this drug testing committee. And we stopped getting them. We stopped getting the invitations. What they did, these guys are so sneaky, but not all that clever. They changed the town that we lived in. So they had the right street, but the wrong town. So we never got these invitations. And I became curious as to why. And so we ended up at the last meeting. And because I found out about it, did some research, found out about it.
Stuffed up your address.
Yes, sure. And we showed up, and so I had lots of questions, and I was a real problem. And I said, so, hold it. My son is not yet 18. Mm-hmm. You will not test him for drugs without my presence. Mm-hmm. You will call me. He will not urinate in a cup without me watching every second of this process, including the destruction of the DNA evidence. And here's what they did.
Who else is going to be watching him pee in a cup?
Well, what they would do is they would call these numbers at random, which my son was called at least 4 times. And what they did was they selected, in my opinion, they selected the numbers of the students, the numbers that represented specific students that would test negatively. They did not want positive tests in their school because I think they were probably rewarded for not having drugs in the school. So they picked the best students for not testing positively for drugs. So, and then what I found out was several of the students who were friends with our son. I'm sorry, what was that, John? It looks like we just lost Guineith, but she'll be back. And let me continue with the discussion. So several of the students who were friends with our son were tested for urine tested, and they tested negatively. So it appeared that there was no drug problem within this school system. But during the meeting, the final meeting for the vote, I said, so what happens when you have a positive? And they said, we send it off. And I said, what if it's a false positive test? So a child urinates in a cup. The test comes back positive right then and there. While the child is watching, it says positive. Now, what could happen? There are a lot of children on asthma type medicine. There are all kinds of medicines that children are on, prescription medicines, bona fide medicines.
Yeah,
and my question,
meds for amphetamines.
Okay, and so there are plenty of bona fide reasons why children are on meds, and they could possibly test positively for this drug test, and then that student is forever marked, branded as a drug user. Let's talk about this when we come back. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. I'm Vin Finelli. Class, Guineith Isaacs is with us, and we're talking about drug testing in schools and in my experience. So my concern was that these children would be branded for life with a false positive, and I wanted to do everything I could possibly do to stop it. And I said, I am against drug testing. I am for drug education. So let's drug educate before. We can do things like Scared Straight, and there are plenty of ways we can teach about drugs, and that's what we should do. The school system was against it, and obviously it was all about money. So, and by the way, I was the only parent who supervised the drug testing of a student. I was the only one, or Mrs. Finelli and I, we'd both show up. We would drop everything. They'd call us. We'd say, no, you have to call us. Our son is not going to pee in a cup, and he has instructions not to pee in a cup, and he will wait until we are there, no matter what. It's not going to happen. Yep. And so
I'll bet your son got fewer invitations after that, after you put your foot down on that.
Well, here's what I had to do. I was so angry with this principal and the superintendent of schools, I decided they needed to be fired. And the only way I could do that was to run for school board office director. So I was brand new to the village here, and nobody really knew who I was, so I put an ad in the paper. And here's what the ad said. Fire the entire school board, one director at a time. Consider voting for Vincent Finelli, the only candidate who won't make your child urinate in a cup. And that was the advertisement that I put in the newspaper. I ended up with 1/8 of the votes. The guy who won was a convicted felon.
Oh my!
He was, he was running for his old job as a director, school board director, and this was a what I would consider a sloppy school board. And I remember going into the school board meeting, and I said, "So what do you think about this? Our son has been called into the office for drug testing 4 times, and you guys say it's random." I said that is not statistically possible.
Yeah.
And they had no idea what I was talking about. They said, "What do you mean? Yeah. What is this statistically? What do you mean by that?" And so I repeated. I said, you don't even know what I'm talking about, do you?" So I was so disgusted.
Your kid gets called up 4 times in a row.
Yeah. So the bottom line is, it, in my opinion, is about money. It's about money from the feds coming into the school system to get DNA samples and to begin getting more and more samples from these students and branding them and forever. And they said it's random and you're not, it doesn't identify. Really? They really think that if you give a student a number and then that student pees in a cup and that student's number is 12, let's say, or 14 or 21, that they don't know who that student is? They absolutely positively do know that number 21 relates to, a specific student. They absolutely know that. Because they call they call the number over, they call the students by name over the PA system. They know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's actually a book out there. It's quite a long book. I've just about finished reading it, but it got made on a film. If you searched on the internet, you could probably find a download of it somewhere. The book, which got made into actually a mini-series, is all about the corruption here in Melbourne and Victoria going back over 100 years. And this film and book is a true story. The author was sued for libel, okay, and the case got thrown out. And you know that if a libel case gets thrown out, there's a pretty good chance that what the guy was saying was the truth, right? And this book is called, and the mini-series is called Power Without Glory. Okay? It's the story in the book. He's called John West. I believe in real life his name was George West. And he was he was Melbourne's Al Capone in the first half of the last half of the 19th and first half of the 20th century. I think that everybody ought to go and read this book or watch the mini-series, okay? Because basically it's outlining exactly everything you said about government corruption, felons getting elected to school boards, and government positions, and, funding, finarkling, we would call it over here, which means messing around with funding. And
Hold that thought. Guineith Isaacs is with us. She's live in Australia. There's a link on the website, usaprepares.com, if you'd like to get in touch with her. Guineith, I wanted to share with you one other thing that we were talking about corruption at the school board level. And so I was at the school board meeting and, watching these guys. And what I found out was parents don't show up. Mrs. Finelli and I were the only visitors during the school board meeting. And they decided they were going to open bids for propane, and they were going to buy like 30,000 gallons of propane for winter heating at that particular meeting. And the superintendent was at the head of the table. She said, I'm so sorry. I opened this bid by accident. And so it's open, but so she had these sealed envelopes. And what she should have done was said, we're going to have to rebid. Yeah. But because she opened the envelope by accident, so she said. So they continued to open, and I'm just watching this. I'm absolutely stunned. And so they're opening the envelopes that were remaining, and they were reading the bids. And there were like maybe 5 bids for this propane. And one of the bids there were local bids, like a guy in town had a company, and he was high in terms of cost. And the lowest cost was probably about 20% less than that. And that was from a larger propane company. It happened to be the same propane company that I selected. Why? Because all propane is the same, and I want to pay the least amount per gallon. Okay. So,
and I'll bet you they got the propane.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said, I'll bet you somebody's buddy got the propane.
That's exactly what happened. And the company that was the least, the company that was the least expensive, the one that I used, had a form letter, and it said that the price per gallon is, and they filled in the amount, plus any applicable taxes, or any plus taxes, if any. Okay, and they signed it. And so the school board's looking at this and they're saying, "Well, geez, we don't know what the tax is, so we can't figure out how much the bid is." And I'm scratching my head. Schools are government organizations. Okay, they don't pay tax.
Aren't they
Governments don't
teach people how to add and do multiplication and stuff.
Well, here's what I did. So they're scratching their heads. And now one of the guys is a CPA, certified public accountant. He's on the school board. And he can't figure out how much the school would pay in taxes. I'm looking at this guy thinking, is this guy for real? So I said, look, if you guys don't know, I spoke up from the
laughing, but this is how things run on every scale in government, and it's total corruption. It absolutely is. I have heard this story a million times, probably not literally a million times, but like I said, I've just finished reading this book, Power Without Glory, and this is basically the plot of the whole book, once over again and over again and over again. This whole state of Victoria is run on lottery revenues, casino revenues, motor vehicle registrations, fines, and the government extorting money out of people so that they continue to live on their own freehold or allodial title land. That's the funding for the whole state. They don't have any. Oh yeah, and GST, which is a extortionate payment on stuff that we have to buy anyway, minus food. They have a sales tax, but you're not allowed to tax food unless it's luxury food. But you try defining what luxury food is. So apparently they have a list, which is of course a bureaucrat's literal feast of defining what a essential health product is, defining what a food is. And I believe up until a few years ago that feminine hygiene products were not classed as an essential health product.
Well, that's easy to fix. That's easy to fix. Ladies, just
found out about that one, and then that one got fixed.
Well, it's easy. It's easy to fix. Just if they're not necessities, just stop using them. Go to work and stop using them, and I think it'd be fixed by Friday.
Yeah. But the thing is, the whole system is one vast extortion racket, and they have an ABN, which under the Australian Corporations Act makes them a corporation, which means they can't be a government, because merger of state and corporate government is called fascism, and fascism is not allowed in this country. Mm-hmm. Under our Constitution.
Let me tell you the rest of the story.
Yeah,
so
okay.
the CPA was trying to figure out, in my mind, I think he was trying to figure out how he could award this or vote to award this to his buddies in the local company. But, I can't say that for sure, but I think that was the case.
Yeah,
and
I would say so.
So they said that, well, we don't know how much the tax is. And so I spoke up and I said, hold it. You guys have internet all over the place, every single classroom. As a matter of fact, the next room over is the superintendent's office. Why don't you walk through this little hallway here, this doorway, and go in there and look it up, and you'll see.
So look it up.
Yeah, and wow, that's too complicated. And so they awarded the contract to the local guy because he's a local guy. I was so outraged that I right then and there started composing in my mind a letter to the newspaper, the local newspaper. And I delineated how much extra this was going to cost. And it got published. And do you know that the bid was canceled? The award of the bid was canceled to the guy they awarded it to, and it was awarded to the low-cost bidder, which was the same company that I used.
Yeah.
But I did.
So
but I also
speaking out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it saved him about $6,000.
If you do,
it saved about $6,000.
Sometimes someone's got to be the first penguin who jumps off the iceberg. You know,
right.
When you know there's as a penguin, you know there's leopard seals prowling around and killer whales and all the rest of it, and you see all these penguins on the iceberg, but none of them wants to be the first one to jump in, but eventually someone has to and run the gauntlet until all the killer whales and leopard seals off. The rest of the flock can actually go out and eat.
Well, the bottom line, the bottom line is when you do these kinds of things, you don't make friends. However, what you do is you stand out. Yeah. And you get called all kinds of things. Like, so we are considered to be in the mob. My family, I guess I would be the head mob person in our family. And people are afraid of us. They're literally afraid of us. Because they think, well, they're convinced. They're convinced that because I wear a gun, that if they cross us, it won't turn out all that well for them. That's what they believe.
And you know what? The Italian surname probably doesn't help much either.
I'm sorry, one more time?
I'll say the Italian surname probably doesn't help much either.
Oh no. See, they're convinced. They're convinced that because I'm from the East Coast, we have a long driveway. I drive. I drive a car with a trunk.
I'm sorry, I think that's the funniest thing in the world.
Well, I've been asked why I drive the particular car I drive, and I said, well, you can put two bodies in the trunk.
And you know something, having known so many genuine gangsters, you're not a gangster, far out. That's the funniest thing in the world for me. Well, I'm not a gangster either. You know something? When I went and made that statement I mentioned the last time to that policeman to complain about the cop that's been, you know, or the cartel of cops actually that's been giving me such a hard time around here, the investigating officer, the corruption investigator, said, listen, we've looked up your criminal record and we're astounded that there is, you have so little contact with the police. And I said, that's because I'm actually an honourable human being who does not want to go around harming my fellow humans. And he said, everything that you've got, traffic citations, driving unregistered vehicles, driving without a licence, etc. And I said, well, that's because I believe that the freedom to travel is a fundamental human right. And it's in Article 13 of the United Nations International Declaration of Human Rights. I was going to say that, but he stopped me. He said, oh, it's all right, I know, whatever, you know. But that was, you know, he said, I can see where you're coming from. And I said, yes, I have the freedom to travel. It is well established as a fundamental, inalienable, that means it can't be fined away, it can't be alienated, which literally means, you know, punished off of you, okay? An alien is literally somebody who is subject to liens, okay? Alien, literally, that's its literal meaning, okay? So if you are an alien in the nation, then technically you are subject to punishment, although that's not how things work in the US at the moment, I understand. But that's what it means. So an inalienable right like travel, okay, the freedom to travel, can't be fined away, can't be licensed, can't be regulated, can't be registered or whatever, okay? But they seek to enforce whatever laws are convenient for them at the moment to enforce. Okay? And that is called corruption. Because the law is the law is the law. It either all applies or none of it applies. And Jesus Christ himself said that. He said if you broke one point of the law, you broke every single one of them. That's what Jesus Christ said. Okay? So, and it goes back hundreds and hundreds of years to the Statute of Monopolies, which was 1612, that you couldn't have licenses and registrations. And anyone can look that up, you know. And in the US, they had their own parallel laws that Washington and the rest of them set up at the foundation of your country, where you could not have, it's called antitrust law.
Hold that thought. Class, Guineith Isaacs is with us, and if you'd like to get in touch with her, spell her name, Guineith, last name Isaacs, and you can look her up on the internet. She's on Facebook. There's a link on page 1 of usaprepares.com, and you can go right to page 1 and you'll find Guineith Isaacs. You can click on it. It'll take you right to the web information about her if you'd like to get in touch with her. Guineith, when I first moved to town, about just over 10 years ago, a town of 100 people, I decided to go to the county seat, and I wanted to meet the commissioners. And I found out that they had lunch together, and they'd meet twice a week, and this part-time job that they had, there were 3 of them, and they'd meet and they'd go to lunch together. And I asked if I could join them for lunch, so I met with them 3 times for lunch, and each of us paid our own way for lunch. I made sure of that. And they asked me a very interesting question. One of them, on the 3rd meeting, I wanted to meet the president of the bank. I wanted to meet these guys. I wanted to see who's who in town. And so one of them, on the 3rd luncheon, one of them leaned across the table at the restaurant, and he said, "Who are you? We can't." I was going to say, he
probably said, "Who are you?"
That's what he said. He said,
yeah.
"Who are you? We can't find anything out about you. Who are you?" And I said, he said, "We did a background check on you, and we can't find anything." And I looked at him very sternly across the table, leaned in toward him, and I said, "Not everyone is a criminal."
That's the truth. That's absolutely the truth. You know, and you know something? Not everyone wants to be involved in their stinking system that reeks to high heaven and turns innocent people into criminals and lets the guilty ones go free. I don't want to have anything to do with such a system. That's why I seceded. That's why I declared myself a princess. Okay? It's not some crazy thing that I woke up one morning and decided I was going to be a princess. I put years of research into this. I spoke with people. I drove actually hundreds of kilometres to speak to secessionist princes, okay, or a particular secessionist prince in person in Australia here, okay, to get his take on why he did what he did, and that's Prince Leonard Casley, by the way. He lives in Western Australia, and he has the Principality of Hutt River, which is a station in outback WA, and he seceded, and he declared himself a prince, his wife a princess, his kids are all princes and princesses, because the government had set up apparently a communistic-type wheat quota on his property, which was absolutely impossible for him to comply with. Okay? Now, that the whole system is a big corporation, and under antitrust laws, you do not have to consent to contract with a corporation if you do not want to. Okay? So if you don't want to buy stuff from Walmart, you don't have to buy stuff from Walmart. You can go to the mum and dad store down the road. Okay? You don't have to contract with Walmart. You don't have to contract with Sam's Club or Macy's or whatever shop they have. I'm not sure if they still have Woolworths in the US. Okay.
Well, they used to. They
still have Woolworths here. Okay. Because actually Barbara Hutton lived in Australia for quite some time, and she set up the Woolworths here. And coincidentally, her son, her heir, I'm not sure if it was her son or someone else, ended up turning into a mass killer. He went crazy with a gun one day and shot a bunch of people.
Hold on for 1 second. Princess Guineith Isaacs, will you come back with us and talk about secession?
I will. Yeah.
Next time you're on. Okay, we'll chat about that off the air, and we'll get you scheduled. I'd love it.
Okay, thank
Princess
you very much
Guineith
for that.
Isaacs. Yeah, thanks
Have
so
a
much.
lovely day.
You too.
Okay,
thanks for staying up late. Bye-bye. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. Delighted to be broadcasting this hour with my dear friend Roy Birdsong. Roy Birdsong owns a store in Springfield, Missouri. It's called Choose Your Own Wireless. It's a cell phone store. And welcome, Roy.
Hey, good morning.
Roy, you've got a heck of a story to tell us. So you were minding your own business, right? And all of a sudden, this little critter bites you.
Yeah, it's called a brown recluse spider that I did not know I had been bitten by until days later. Brown recluses, that's hence the name brown recluse. They hide in dark, reclusive places. And everybody keeps asking me, did you get bit outside? Did you get bit inside? Well, through my research, most people usually get bitten on the inside of the house. It's usually coming from the bedroom. Those spiders hide in dark, reclusive places in the bedroom. They hide in your drawers. They hide in your closets. And I'm going to guess that's probably where it came from. They climb up into the bed at night. I thought at first when I got bitten, because I've been outside wearing shorts outside, doing some work outside, that I'd been bitten by something outside. What was so unusual was where I got bit. I got bit on the inside of my left leg. And it was hard to see and hard to follow up on. At first, when I got bit by it, I thought I thought it was just a benign bug bite of some sort. Didn't pay much attention to it until about 4 or 5 days later, when I started getting sick and coming down with chills. And this was back in August. The weather back in August was like 90-something degrees. I was standing out in front of my store, cold as heck. I mean, I was freezing to death. I grabbed my briefcase and I told everybody in my store, I said, I'm going home. So I went home, got in the bed. My wife came home. She said, what are you doing home so early? And I said, I'm sick. I don't know what's wrong with me. And she said, is there anything different about your body? Have you been perhaps bitten by something? It was unusual because my wife's a pretty smart cookie, and she picked up on that real quick. And I said, well, the only thing I can recall is first part of the week. This was on a Friday. The only thing I could recall was first part of the week I had this bite. And I hadn't even looked at it because, like I said, it's hidden down on the inside of your leg, and you don't get up every morning bending over looking at the inside of your leg. So, so she took a look at it, and she said, you've been bitten. And she said, you've been bitten by brown recluse. Now, my wife is an OBGYN. For an OBGYN to pick up on that quick is pretty amazing to me. She went to her medical form on the computer and pulled it up, and there it was. the pictures of my spider bite. It was swollen, ulcerated, had a black dot in the middle of it, and the tissue had already started deteriorating. So she said, you got to go. We got to take you over to emergent care over at Cox Hospital. And we went over there, and they took my white blood cell count. They did all the tests. My white blood cell count came back about 38,000, which is really high, meaning I was fighting off an infection. So the doctor there took one look at me and said, you got to go. I said, okay. So they took me to the hospital. I got to the hospital, and my wife called a surgeon in to take a look at the necrotic tissue, the deteriorating tissue. He took one look at me and said, you got to go. So I went from the hospital bed to the operating room within the hour after the surgeon looked at my leg, and they cut a place on the inside of my leg about the size of about 3-4 inches in circumference, about a half inch to 3/4 inch deep to cut out all the dead tissue. Now remember, I had probably been bitten the first part of the week, so I had gone way beyond the limits for probably getting really sick and even to the point of passing out. And from all the other research that I've done, a lot of people have lost legs and hands and arms over these spider bites. So I felt very lucky. So I spent quite a bit of time in the hospital, about 7 or 8 days.
So Roy, what you experienced with Cox Hospital, COX, is wonderful. I mean, they took care of you right away, and that was the same experience that I had there. They don't mess around. It's not typical of what you might find in a hospital, where you might wait a day or so to go from an urgent care situation into the hospital. And you went from urgent care to the hospital to surgery immediately, right?
Pretty much. I mean, it was wham bam. You got to go. You got to go. Everybody kept going. I was going to the next stage in this. You know, the precipitator of all of this is the white blood cell count. That's really high. 38,000 is really high, which means that they had a window to get rid of this infection, and that's why it went so fast. You know, I've had customers come in. You know what blew me away about this whole thing was I'm 70 years old. Never in my life have I been bitten by anything that had venom in it. And I've been out in the woods. I've been around. And as I was telling my story later on to my customers, the customers were all telling me either they had been bitten by one or a family member, and they roll their pants. Most people get bitten on the legs. They'd roll their pants legs up and show me the divot in their legs from the hole that had been cut out from the spider bite. Or a family member had been bitten. Or a family member had lost an arm or had a leg amputated. I didn't know I did. I was totally unaware and caught completely off guard that there was that much going on with spider bites.
Now, these brown recluse spider, they're small. These guys are small. They're like 1/4 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch in size. They may grow a little longer. They might last 1 to 2 years in lifespan. But they're kind of brown. They've got long legs and.
Well, the funny part about it, the way you recognize them, and again, they're really small. They have a dark brown violin shape on their head that starts at their head and works back to the midsection of their back, and that's kind of how everybody identifies it. Now, the recommended thing to do about getting rid of brown recluse or controlling brown recluse is these little tent things that they sell that have the glue in them, the tent traps. Have you seen those? And they've got the glue on the bottom of it. Apparently, chemicals don't do very well killing brown recluse spiders because they have hair on the bottom of their feet. and they walk on the hair of their feet. So to get a chemical into their body, their body, to get a chemical to kill them, it's got to penetrate the body of the spider. And since they walk on the hairs in their feet, chemicals really don't do well. The other thing about using chemicals, as you know, a lot of chemicals are toxic. I don't like using a lot of chemicals either. And the other thing that chemicals do is they kill the predators of the brown recluse. There are other bugs and spiders that eat brown recluse. So you're killing off the predators, and you're not doing yourself any favor by spraying the chemical down there because you can't control them very well. The number one product that is sold in this country right now, especially in Missouri and Oklahoma, where spiders, brown recluse spiders, hobo spiders are really bad, is that tent trap. That's what's sold. And, in my house, we probably have 15 or 20 of them. People, you should get them, put them in closets under the bed back along the baseboard there, and within a week, you'll find them. Everybody's got them. I've had people say, well, I don't really have brown recluse spiders. A week or two later, they'll come back in and they'll say, you know what? We got brown recluse spiders. They just didn't pay any attention to it. They hadn't been bitten by it. And a spider is a spider. A spider is a bug to most people. It's pretty benign. They don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. But what was more interesting about this experience is the treatment that I went through. They treated the hole in my leg with a biological from a company called A-Cell. That is a product. It's called biological. It's stem cell therapy, but it's not human stem cell therapy. It's pig bladder that they grind up into what they call magical pixie dust. And they pack it in the hole in your leg, and it regenerates your cells, and it regenerates them faster than normal. They developed all of this over in Iraq because they had a lot of soldiers over there that had holes blown in their leg, huge holes. Now, this stuff can't be used in the muscle part of the body. It can only be used in the fleshy part. And because the cells are abundant in fleshy part of the body. But they packed those holes, and those soldiers recovered, and the holes eventually filled up with tissue and grew over the top of it, and they didn't even have to have they didn't have to have any surgery or any skin put over the top of it. So it just grew back naturally. No skin grafts involved at all in these cases. Now, these soldiers were sedentary. They were laying in beds with this stuff being packed on, and generally what they did to me was they would repack me every week. I'm sure they did the same thing to those soldiers. The hole in my leg was similar to a hole that you have if you were over in Iraq and you got hit by shrapnel. It's similar type circumstances where they would have to fill them with this biological.
Roy, hold that thought and tell us some more about this awful experience that you went through. And let's talk about some advice to prevent it, and also, what do you do if it happens? We'll be right back. Roy Birdsong, Choose Your Own Wireless in Springfield. Roy Birdsong's with us, and if you've been to the Get Prepared Expo, you've had a chance to meet and chat with Roy Birdsong. And his company is Choose Your Own Wireless in Springfield, Missouri. It's a cell phone store. Roy, how dramatic was this single spider bite in your life?
It was pretty dramatic. I've never had anything take me down like the spider bite, but it's kind of my fault because I didn't pay much attention to it. And given, again, where I'd been bitten, it wasn't an everyday thing that you stood in front of the mirror and noticed that you had this bite on your arm or on your neck or on your chest or anywhere else on your body. It was in a place that just was not visible. So I didn't check it every day. I mean, the biggest thing they tell you when you get bit by a brown recluse spider or anything that's venomous is, of course, get to the doctor right away. Put ice on it. Don't put heat on it. Put ice on it. They sell a brown recluse spider bite kit, which you apparently tried to research. They're not very forthcoming with what they've got in it. But one of the things go ahead.
Yeah. I called the
one of the things that they have in there is what they call activated charcoal. Now, I've had other customers come in and tell me that they have been able to heal the brown recluse spider bite with nothing more than activated charcoal. Now, I'm assuming they have packaged the kit up. That is, you just order the kit. It's probably got something in there that draws out the venom, along with the activated charcoal, and they've done it in kit form, but they're not forthcoming with everything that they have in there because they know, especially a lot of your listeners, would be able to make, and which they do now. They make their own home kits. They don't need to order a brown recluse spider bite kit. It's a convenience thing, like going to a convenience store. You just order this kit, put this on your spider bite. And how I found out about it was a customer. I had a customer who had been bitten about 2-3 years ago, and he got bit on the back, and it ulcerated and raised up. And he just happened to remember that for some dumb, odd reason, he ordered this brown recluse spider bite kit on Amazon. And he had his wife go find it. It took him a while to find it. He had it was back in the drawer somewhere. And she put that stuff on him, and he never even had to go to the doctor. Again, the quickest thing to do is put ice on it and get to the doctor right away, because that is the surefire way. But the big thing, no matter who you are, if you've been bitten by something, I don't care what it is, and it has raised up and ulcerated, you need to go to the doctor and find out what it is. Through some of the research I did, I found out there's another spider out there called the hobo spider. Hobo spider and the brown recluse spider are the two more dangerous spiders out there because they both pack venom. And I think the hobo is a little worse than the brown recluse spider. However, in Missouri and Oklahoma are the two worst states for brown recluse and hobo spiders. So that's why I say you need to be aware of what's going on. Now, what bothers me and what scares me is, and the good thing about it is children. If children get bit, usually just the slightest pain will make them cry and whine, and you'll know that there's something wrong with them. With adults, we have a tendency to just pass it off and think that it's going to go away, which is what I did, and it didn't go away. Again, let's go back to the stem cell therapy. The stem cell therapy that they used on me, the biological, I went through about 8 weeks of packing this biological material. It got the flesh on my leg, the hole in my leg, up even with my skin. I had to have a quarter-size skin graft done on that because the surgeon was getting tired of waiting. And I was kind of a guinea pig because the sales rep was there the whole time. Every time I went to a surgeon's office to repack my leg, he would bring the biological in because I was kind of a guinea pig for it.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit more about that when we get back. And also, how about did you create quite a stir in awareness at Cox Hospital? Did this event wake up a whole bunch of people or was it just routine? Let's talk about that when we come back. Class, Roy Birdsong is with us. Roy Birdsong was bitten by a brown recluse spider, and it changed his life. And he's telling the story. And he's telling you that should this happen to you?
There because I was researching this Fortress clothing company that was an advertiser for you. I was trying to find out what it was that they put in their clothes that keeps your butt cheeks from freezing. That's what they said. So
So
that kind of got my curiosity.
It's interesting you say that, Roy, because from time to time I hear these new commercials on USA Prepares as well, and I'll hear the commercial during the commercial break, and next thing I know, I'm typing on the keyboard and I'm looking up this advertiser, and many times I call them up. I have not called up Fortress yet, but I plan to do that. And I talk to them, and I want to make sure that I understand what they're doing and that it's a good fit. Now, I don't put all the commercials on our show. I hear them for the first time when our class hears them. So, Roy, you were being treated at Cox Hospital or at one of their offices, and the representative from the biological company that made this material that they were applying to your body was there at each of these treatments. Is that because he wanted to see firsthand and report back firsthand to his company what was happening with you?
They're trying to get this approved here in Springfield and hospitals all across the country. Stem cell therapy and any biologicals being used has to go through a process of being approved, being able to for use. And my wife actually figured this out a week after I had got out of the hospital. She had to go to a medical program with this company. Their big thing right now is prolapse uteruses. They have got a product now made out of the same stuff to replace the sling that you hear so much about, the mesh sling to support the uterus when it drops. They have got a technique now, and they've got a product now that they can replace that with the same biological material. And of course, over a period of time, the biological material just disintegrates into the body, and your uterus is repaired. And that's how come I knew so much about it, because she had told me what all they had at this meeting that she went to. And she's pretty excited about it, being able to do a lot of repair work. So I was on the way back from this meeting. She and the rep got to talking, and he started telling her, when she was describing to him the hole in my leg, he said, "Hey, why don't we use the biological that my company sells, and let's see if we can repair his leg," which would be a success story for him and for Kathy and my wife, and for them to be able to walk into Cox and say, "Look at what this is doing." Now, the surgeon is in a large surgical group, so his impression of this product would be a very good recommendation if it worked with all the other surgeons, which would help put a little pressure on the hospital to approve this. The only problem that they had with me is I was not sedentary. People know that came in the store during September and October. I was rocking around most of the time with a machine attached to me that was called a medical vacuum machine that puts pressure and sucks on the tissue to help it grow up towards the top part of the leg to the tissue or to the skin part. So it would constantly suck this, keep pressure on that hole to pull the flesh as it grew back, to pull it closer to the top part of my leg. And by walking around and where I was bitten, I was actually moving this biological around. Remember, the soldiers that they used this on were sedentary. They laid there and they packed it, and this stuff stayed in one spot. I'm walking around. I'm still working, doing stuff at the house. I'm doing this. I'm just not very good about laying around. And it was moving on me, which what we came up with was taking a longer time for it to work than it ordinarily would, because even the rep said, I can't understand why it's taking so long. And he consulted with the company, and they said it's got to be because I'm not laying around with my leg up and this stuff packed in this hole in my leg and letting it do its job. And that's pretty much the consensus on that, is that me walking, moving my legs rubbing together, was moving this biological material around. It wasn't staying in one spot. So that was the only issue that they had with me. But the surgeon was pretty impressed with what it did. But surgeons are built to fix things and fix them now. And we probably could have gone another 2 or 3 weeks, and it would have healed up over and healed the skin up. In other words, the expectation of this was you wouldn't even know that hole was there. That's the expectations of this product. Mm-hmm. That's what it did for deeper, wider holes for the soldiers over in Iraq that they experimented with. It really worked. And it worked for me, too. It just, that last little hurdle, the surgeon was getting tired of messing with it. He just said, it's small enough now, he said, we can do a little bitty, tiny skin graft, close it up, and be done with it, which is what he wanted to do. So that was the experience with me. Now, as far as Cox goes, they see this a lot, but they don't see as a dramatic situation as mine was, because I let mine go so long. But they've had other people in there that have had to have the tissue cut out, and it leaves a big divot in their body wherever it's being cut out. But mine was a little more dramatic in so much as I had gone too long. I'd gone way too long. Mm-hmm. Before we recognized that this is a problem.
Roy, as a result of chatting with you months and months ago about this, we wear leather gloves around the farm almost all the time, and during the summer when it was hot, going out in the garden, we don't put our hands in the garden without leather gloves if we can avoid it, because we just don't want to be bitten by these spiders. Is that something that you recommend, or what has changed in your protocol regarding where you...
The recommendation is that, and y'all live on a farm. I live out, not on a farm, but I live out in the way on some acreage. The recommended thing to do is to be aware. Now, whenever I go to put my shoes on, I shake them out. But remember, these brown recluse spiders walk on the hair of their feet, so they don't ordinarily have a good grasp on what they're standing on. So it's easy to shake them out of your clothes. They say the recommendation is be aware, shake your shoes out, because if they're in your shoes, they'll crawl up your leg once you put your shoe on and bite you on the leg. A lot of the bites are between the kneecap and the foot. Again, brown recluse spiders not ordinarily found in gardens and places out in the open. They're reclusive. They want to be in dark places, hidden. They really don't want contact with people. So when you go to get ready for your day's activities, shake your shoes out, your boots, just shake them out. And if you put on a pair of blue jeans that you pulled out of the closet, shake those out a little bit. Shake your shirts out. I know it's hard to remember to do that, especially if you're in a hurry, but that is typically what they recommend, and about the only thing you can do to keep bitten by it. The gloves will keep you... I wear gloves, too. When I'm working, I always wear gloves. But that didn't stop this bite, because I'm almost comfortable in believing that I got this bite probably from inside the house, perhaps sleeping at night. And the other thing too is people who have bedspreads that touch the floor, they recommend to use shorter bedspreads so they don't touch the floor, because a lot of insects that get into your bed, especially spiders, they grab hold of those quilts and coverlets and all of the in bedspreads, and they climb up those bedspreads. They get in the bed and they lay down there in the bottom of the bed. Of course, you get in the bed at night and they crawl up through the bed. They bite you. So, for example, I've got a quilt on my bed that's a little oversized, and we just curl the corners up and throw them up on, we fold the corners back on each bed, that the part that touches the floor, so that there's nothing for a spider to grab a hold of to get into the bed. Those are some of the easiest, quickest, best precautions you can take for trying to keep bitten by a brown recluse. But if you get bitten outside somewhere, it's generally by something else other than a brown recluse. All the research I've done, nobody's had any proof that they've been bitten by a brown recluse outside. So,
how do they get in? How do they get inside? Do we know? Do they come in on our shoes?
No, they just they come in through the cracks and crevices of the foundation. They're just like any other spider out there. They just find their way in, and they, again, if they're outside, they come in because they're looking for dark, reclusive places. I mean, you know, one of the worst places that we have in the house is closets and under your bed. Those are the two darkest, most reclusive places. People don't go in and out of closets all the time, so there's not a whole lot of activity there. And you're not laying around the bed all day long, so there's little activity there. So, and that's kind of what they live by.
How about basements?
Basements, same thing. They stay down in the dark.
Okay.
I've got these little tent traps all over the place, and most of the people that I talk to, my customers and people that I know, they're all using these things. You know, I can stand there and tell somebody about this, and I can mention a brown recluse spider and tell them I had a hole in my leg, and they shudder. And the first words out of their mouth is, "I'm going to go get some of those tent traps." Put them all over the house because they don't want to get bit by them either. And like I said earlier, people who weren't aware of this went and got those tent traps. And like I said, you can put them down. In 1 week, you'll have bugs and spiders trapped in there, and you'll find brown recluse spiders in there.
Roy Birdsong, if a person were a sole proprietor, you know, one-man band and had a business, could getting bitten by one of these things absolutely take down the business?
If you don't have good support staff, it could. But again, you know, the reason why I didn't heal very fast is because I went to work.
Okay, hold that thought. We'll be right back. Let's talk about phones when we come back. A number that you can be contacted, let's say at your store, should someone have a question about telephones or anything else they'd like to talk with you about?
Yeah. Well, the main thing is with me, they can bring their own phone. So we do more than phone sales. In phone repair, we also sell what they call non-contract plans. In fact, we're getting ready to launch our own MVNO. If everything goes right, within the next couple of weeks, it'll be called My Ozarks Cellular, and that's going to offer, it's going to give us better control over what we do. So, because everything that we do at our store, with our contracts, we are the customer service department. And it's awfully hard to deal through or go through, even as a dealer, to talk to these third-party cellular providers, because a lot of times with about 70% of them, they're all located, they've got call centers that are located out of the country, so it makes it more difficult to control all that. The My Ozarks will be ours, and we will have American controls. It'll be an American company. But what we do offer is a way to shave off almost 50% of your cell phone bill and get the same service, and if not more, than what you already have. Technology is changing a lot. It's changing really fast. I know you've always been concerned with having a phone, holding it up to your ear. The technology now is going so fast that phones are almost going to be obsolete. It's the accessories that are going to drive phone sales in the future. For example, they've got watches now that you can receive text on. You can answer the phone without even holding it up to your ear and just talk to the watch. They've got the new technology for for earphones and stuff like that. They're almost so small. The microphones are so sensitive. It'll almost be benign to be able to answer and talk on the phone. So for a lot of those people that have those concerns, that's the one thing. And of course, the thing that we do, that we always did, especially in the very beginning when you first started doing these shows and we started doing the expos, you can come in and get a plan. You don't even have to use your own name. You pick out your favorite movie star or athlete or whatever, and you can call it that and use that as a name. I make this joke because we got Reba McEntire out there somewhere. We've got Marilyn Monroe out there somewhere, several Marilyn Monroes, people who are using those guys. It's kind of fun, and it also it also gives you a little bit of anonymity. And one of the things that we do is we look out for, the security of all that we do. And, the president of T-Mobile made a comment this week that is kind of so true, but it's true not only for these two companies that he was talking about. His competitors, Verizon, and then another company called Mediacom, are actually Comcast, which is part of Mediacom, or Mediacom's part of Comcast. But those are two companies that are the most hated companies in the country. And I talk to customers all the time. Nobody knows who to trust. The traditional companies that we all used to do business with via insurance or whatever, hospitals, doesn't make any difference. Nobody trusts anybody anymore. And for good reason, because it's been helter-skelter for the past 8 years. And nobody's been responsible for anything, which has been kind of the way this country's been running. So we are that responsible party for our customers.
Would you give out that number to call?
Yeah, it's 417-823-3715.
417-823-3715. And that'll connect you with 3715. 417-823-3715. And that'll connect you with Roy Birdsong's team. Roy, I really appreciate you being on the air with us, sharing the story about what's happening in the cell industry and cell phone industry, and also the story about the brown recluse. Do you have a feel for which way you like to go right now, Apple or Android?
Really, it's a matter of how technologically you want to be. Here's my opinion on it. I use an Apple product, but I in no way am in love with Apple. I mean, it just happens to be a convenient smartphone for me to use. I'm not that guy. I own a cell phone company, but I'm not that guy that sits there and plays with my phone all day long. However, I have
Roy, we're out of time.
To do that.
We're out of time.